Hi guys, Knife Detector here. I wanted to show you this oldie but goodie. All right, this is really old. This is over 100 years old, I would surmise. It's a Valley Forge, and it's back from a time when they used to hand make every single part for these knives, and they weren't really mass produced. They had to hand make them themselves. So there's a symbol. See the circle with the V and the F? That's pretty cool. Pardon my shakiness there. Yeah. So I ended up getting this knife for about $4.95 plus shipping, which wasn't bad at all, like another $3 from eBay. I believe the person said that it was in their grandfather's collection, or that he found it with his grandfather's things. Person that used to own this knife, even though it probably fell and broke at one time, carried it so much that it smoothed out the edges right here, which you can clearly see. Now I've cleaned up that a little bit because of stuff I'm going to do to it. I really don't want to mess with this knife, guys, because it's got a lot of history and heritage to it. But, you know, it's not a perfect knife. It does have its flaws. And realistically speaking, you know, although this will have some further use after I'm done with it, it will never be the same as it used to be in that quality. So I am going to do a few things to it. Really don't want to mess with that scale because I want to keep the old stuff. I like to keep the nostalgic stuff. I like to keep the wood. Love that wood. They just don't make it like that anymore with that kind of wear that's you can just get from pocket carry. That was a chip 2 at one time, and then it just smoothed out wearing in somebody's pocket. But you notice that that liner right there has a curve to it. So that curve on that liner is keeping that wood handle from going down all the way. Did that stop the knife from performing its function? No. It would still cut and it would still perform its function, and that's what mattered back then. That's what matters today. But a lot of people today are more into aesthetics. Another imperfection right here, you can see the spring. The spring for the large blade doesn't quite fit the handle and the liner. And as you can see here, it still even protrudes out a little bit, and it goes a little further than the rest of it here. Now, inside, you probably won't be able to see, but this pin does not go through that spring. That spring kind of just rests on top of it. So that's another flaw in this knife. So this knife looks like it was made kind of hastily. But again, they were probably doing this as quickly as they can to turn out as many as they could and to sell as many as they could to create a profit back then, to try and make ends meet for their family. So I gave this pin here a couple of knocks to try and tighten up the blades a little bit, but what I'm noticing is that because of this issue with the liner lock, that's kind of preventing that from really keeping those blades from having too much play. So they're going to have play probably no matter what if I leave that the way it is. I could do a total disassembly and just remove all of the pins and redo the pins. But at that point, I'm going to damage what's left of this beautiful wood, which I believe is an ebony or a cocobolo. So, tough decisions. When I first got this knife, this was curved too. So I decided to make it a little bit more usable and have it come to a point. It's not beautiful, but it's functional. Just like me. Not beautiful, but functional. Ha ha ha. Laugh out loud. So I'm going to go ahead and do some things to this. And some of you guys might think this is sacrilegious what I'm going to do to this knife. I'm going to fill in this hole there. I'm going to dye it again to match the rest of the wood. I am also going to probably grind this down so that that back spring and this back spring meet at the lowest point. And my cats appear to be having some issues over there. Thomas, get away from my backpack. So, aside from that, that's going to be in the next part to this video. But I'm also going to show you some images of when I bought it and before I sharpened it, because this really had no edge at all. So I put a little edge on it and tried to not to take off as much as a blade as I possibly could. The blade was still in that shape when I got it. Like I said, I decided to bring this one to a little point as well because it was just rounded off totally. But you're going to see that in the pictures. And now, because I did give that pin a couple of taps with a hammer, although it does have snap, it's very hard to pull out from that position. But I think some oiling is going to take care of that. And this used to have snap, the small one, and now it doesn't. So, okay, let's see how it turns out. When you see it next, it will no longer be a swell end. It might be about even with this side. And I'm going to grind that down. I'm going to put some of that in there. I'm going to give some more tamping to some of those pins to try and bring those sides a little closer together. But it's not going to be complete because of that imperfection there. And I think that's a factory imperfection. All right, guys, stay tuned. Okay, guys, so as you can see, I've already done a couple of things to it. It's still mostly a swell end, as you can see. I went ahead and I evened out those sides to where now the spring is flush with all of the liners and the butt of it. And I started to machine some of that, right, and grind that off. I started to get that smell of the wood. You guys know what I'm talking about, that burnt wood smell. It does smell kind of like cocobolo. I think that might be what it is. Of course, can't really do anything about that unless I totally disassemble it. I also figured out that part of the reason that I do have some play in this larger blade is because, guys, it is a 100-year-old knife, and there is some wear. There's just not as much steel in this knife as there used to be. This area here, this part of the blade, is much thinner than this part of the blade up in here. So it's actually much thinner than it used to be. So there is going to be some play there, and part of that is not avoidable because the other issue is that the spring is still quite thick. I don't know if you can see, but the spring is still quite thick, but the blade is not, because the blade has gotten heavy use over the years, as you can see. So there is going to be some play in there. Can't avoid that. But guys, this knife's over 100 years old. Another thing I did with it is I went ahead and I created it into an easy open. Person that had this knife before me really got a lot of use out of it, and what they did is they grinded this blade, or they used this blade and sharpened it so much that the kick on this blade is really worn. The kick is really worn, so that means that when it goes down, it sits so deep that it's really hard to open. So because of that, I made this into kind of like an easy open, so that way you can go ahead and pull that out much easier. So it's still utilitarian. So this is not done. Could just leave it like that. It's usable as is. But what I may still do is put a little bit of wood filler there and just fill in those cracks and then dye it all the same color. And next time you see it, it'll probably be done as much as I'm going to do to it anyway. And that'll be that. And hopefully it'll still have years of use ahead of it. Hi guys, Knife Detector here. So this is the finished product right here. I made a few changes to it. I'm going to go over what they are. As you recall, one of those changes was that this was not flush up here. This spring was protruding. The one on this side was protruding out, and I consider that to be a factory flaw. So I kind of tried to smooth it out so that it would be even, at the risk of it not being a swell knife anymore, swell end knife. Still a bare head knife. It's called a bare head because it doesn't have any bolsters or any type of nickel, silver metal back here or anything like that. It's called a bare head. It's bare back here. It's naked. So I decided to go ahead and smooth that out anyway. Now, if you recall from the pictures that you saw before this, there was a big break right here, which it's still in there. And you can tell with the modification I made that there was something there, but I went ahead and I put some wood filler in here just to kind of give it a little bit more life and a little bit mask some of those imperfections while still keeping it vintage. I wanted to keep as much of the wood as I could because this is a vintage knife and I didn't want to mess with that too much. I did give this a few more hits, some more powerful hits with the hammer and the ball peen and a pin on the pin, and using a punched tool that I have. And what ended up happening is it did close in a little bit more, so a little happy about that. I did also make a modification. You guys are going to hate me for this, but remember, I like to make knives usable. I don't like to have them to where they're going to fall apart or that I can't access them. So another change I made was that this blade was rounded, as you remember from the picture. I decided to take a little bit off the top there so that I can go ahead and give it some semblance of a point. Right? And because there was a lot of wear to the kick part of this knife, I couldn't get it out. So I made this into easy open. And I grinded a little bit off of there so that it becomes a little easier to open for me, just like that. And the reason is that the kick was so worn that this knife rested so low. So now I can pull it out a little easier. And a little easier on my thumbnails. So it's no life. You can still tell that it's old because of the patina. And you can still tell that it had a repair. But sometimes you love a knife so much that you want to do a little repair. You want to put a little yourself in it. And in future videos, I might show some knives that I've acquired that someone else showed that same type of love to the knife because they wanted it to last a little bit longer. They wanted it to be passed on to somebody else, and they put a little bit of their own love, a little bit of their own ingenuity into it, make it last a little bit longer. So this is my contribution to this bad boy. I have another couple of knives that I've noticed that previous owners made repairs on. So I'm going to showcase them in a few videos. I'm also going to let you know that I'm going to post some images of a blog spot. There's a blog spot that I got an email from that asked me to mention them in my video, and they included me in a top 20 knife channels on YouTube, and they had a certain criteria for that. And there's some cool channels in there too, like The Next Archer. There's also Blade HQ. There's some other cool names that they included me in with, which I'm kind of honored with. So I'm going to show you their information in case you guys want to check that website out. I think it's a blog. So if you guys want to check that out, I'm going to put that at the end of the video. Might also put the information on the description if you guys want to click on that. And in that channel, it also gives you an opportunity to submit your own channel, which I thought is kind of cool. It might make it easier to find for you. For other people that are looking for more knife enthusiast channels like us, the few, the proud, the knife enthusiasts. So happy detecting, guys. This is Knife Detector signing off, saying stay sharp, God bless, and happy hunting, because these guys are out there. This guy's probably 100 years old, and he may outlive me yet. Still got some snap, just like my knees. God bless, take care, enjoy the weekend. Hi guys, it's called blog.feedspot.com, in case you guys are interested. Thank you.